I want to just give a little tiny recap of the gospel, or to put it in these words, that Jesus, first of all, compares himself or says that he is the shepherd. He's not a thief, a marauder. And he straight out says there's only two ways to come at the sheep. You're either there to steal and destroy or kill, or you're there to protect and to love. But then, as if his followers didn't get it, he says he's the shepherd and a good shepherd. Then he says something which I always thought was kind of strange, but he says, I'm the sheep door. I'm the door. Well, after years of hearing this and not really getting it, I looked it up one time in a commentary. Why the reference to the door? And as I put in the pastor notes today in the bulletin, the sheep were penned in behind walls. That was to protect them from wolves and marauders. So the only way they could go in and out was through the door. They couldn't climb the walls of the gates. So the shepherd often would lie down in the doorway because the sheep wouldn't walk over him. And so he, in effect, became the door. And the door was what let the sheep in. The door was what let the sheep out. But most important, the door was what protected them from evil. I think this is an extraordinary reflection on Jesus as the good shepherd and as the sheep door, the sheep gate. He wants to give us something. He wants to give us protection, but he wants to give us life, good life. And the final words of the gospel today, I think, sum it up most beautifully. A thief comes only to steal and slaughter and destroy. I came so that they might have life and have it more abundantly. Over the years, I've come to appreciate many of the mystics of the church and religious spiritual writers today who try to capture the power and significance of grace in our lives. And an image I've never forgotten, and whether it be a tiny thimble or a huge gallons of water jug, if you fill it so that it's full, no matter how small or big the container. But more importantly than that, what Jesus comes to do is not just fill it, but to fill it to such superabundance that it spills over and, if you will, even becomes wasted. Do you think that Jesus only helps us when we ask? Do you think with our tiny minds that he only gives us a little tiny bit or just the amount we need? For example, in this time of pandemic crisis, the whole world is struck by this virus. The whole world is at risk. And I know that right now some people are marching to say, we want to get outside, we want to be free now again. And I guess I'm kind of confused by that. I look at the facts, the data, the deaths, and I look at what's happening and the fear, and yet the vast majority of people say we must take care, not only of ourselves, but of each other. That's grace. That's grace in superabundance. We hear of a God who loves us so much that he never stops giving. He gives before we ask. He gives before we need. He gives to answer every need, even the ones we don't even recognize yet as needs. And in our humility and in our gratitude, it seems to me, especially on this Feast of the Good Shepherd, we're asked to step back and say, Lord, you are the Lord of life. And perhaps my favorite example is Jesus on the cross. When he is there with his hands extended, not by choice, but because they've been nailed to the wood of the cross. And he has every reason to hate, every reason to condemn. And instead, he says these words, Father, forgive them all. They know not what they do. Now that's grace in superabundance. That's love in the face of hatred. That's forgiveness in the face of injustice. Today, we celebrate the Good Shepherd. And then we say, Lord, help us to follow you, to be good shepherds also, under your example and your guidance. Let us be a tiny reflection even a tiny reflection of the goodness that you are and the life-giving care that you always share with us. Today, we celebrate you as a good shepherd and ask that you give good shepherds to the church and that all of us may learn to be good shepherds to one another.